Te hei moriora, te whare e te nui tēnā koe, te mana whenua o tēnā rohi tēnā koutou. Ine mana, ina rio, era rangitirama, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Good evening everybody, and I've just addressed you in one of the official languages of New Zealand, the language of our Māori people. And what I've basically said is welcome to you tonight, to all the people who are here, and I acknowledge those who will be speaking and a warm welcome. I'd also like to acknowledge the First People of Australia, their leaders past and present and future, and particularly the local custodians of the land, the Nguruwai people. Thank you for the traditional welcome that was given to us at the beginning. And this is something new for me here in Australia, having visited here and been here for many, many years. In the last few years, I see this change happening in Australia, and I feel privileged that wherever we go, we now have a welcome to country, which I think is so important when you're developing a bicultural country and going to a multicultural country. So very warm greetings from the New Zealand High Commission here in Canberra, and I'm here with my deputy Llewellyn Roberts, who's been here for a very long time, like 4.5 years, and is departing, well, it's a long time in diplomatic terms, and who is departing from here in June. And I just want to acknowledge you, Llewellyn, because I know you have been involved in many of the communities here in Canberra in your time. Thank you so much for inviting us to be here at your interfaith dinner this evening. And I have attended many such dinners back home in my city of Wellington. And I always saw them as a time to come together, to meet up with family and friends, and to renew friendships, to make new friends over a shared meal. And thank you so much for the lovely meal that we have had this evening. And for us, these were dinners where differences in background and race and belief really didn't matter. They were just the enjoyment of being together. And tonight it feels the same, that we are among friends. Recently I read a quotation which I believe captures the spirit of what such evenings as this can be about. And it went like this: imagine what we could build together if we used faith, hope and love as our building blocks. Just imagine. But on the 15th of March, the terrorist attack in Christchurch on 2 mosques, a place of peace and worship, took 51 innocent lives. 50 more were hospitalised, and hundreds were there during the attack. It was an act of terrorism unseen in peaceful New Zealand before. And in the past month, it has brought home to New Zealanders and others around the world of the impact of ignorance, blind ideology and hatred that can fester in our communities. Tonight, as we gather together, I want to share just some thoughts with you following the tragic events in Christchurch. We are devastated by the terrorist attack against our Muslim community. Diversity is something that New Zealand values and celebrates, and the attack in Christchurch strikes against our very core values. Our bedrock of values is rooted in fairness and cultural respect. And New Zealand is one of the most multicultural nations in the world. We are a nation of 200 ethnicities, 160 languages. And we work hard to be an inclusive country which has promoted peace and security around the world for generations. For example, I'm old enough to remember our stand against nuclear weapons and nuclear testing. And in 1987, we passed legislation to make our territorial sea, land and airspace nuclear-free zones. Our 3-decade anti-nuclear campaign still remains the only successful movement of its type in the world, in which has resulted in nuclear-free zone being enshrined in legislation. We have joined peacekeeping missions in many parts of the world, and we have signed most UN conventions, including the Declaration on the Elimination of All Forms of Intolerance and of Discrimination based on religion or belief. We have no tolerance for violence and extremism of any kind. Today, New Zealand and the Muslim world are united in our opposition to terrorism, and we are grateful to Islamic nations that stand together with us at this time. Muslims are part of our community. They are our friends, our colleagues, our neighbours. And as our Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern has said immediately following the attacks, they are us. We are also deeply grateful for all the messages of sympathy and support and solidarity that we have received from our friends around the world. Our Australian friends have once again shown why we are considered the most connected countries on the planet. Support and help poured into Christchurch from Australia, from agencies, even within minutes of the attack, often when we hadn't even asked for it. And our relationship in such times of trouble is that we will respond as if the issue is our own. And it can be whether it's floods or bushfires or whatever, and it goes both ways. The terrorist is an Australian, but his views do not represent Australia or New Zealand. We both utterly reject his views. In Christchurch, a national remembrance service for the victims was held on Friday, the 29th of March, and it was jointly led by our government, by the City of Christchurch, Ngāi Tahu, the local iwi, the local tribe of the area, and the Muslim community. And thousands of people turned out in shared grief. Mosques around New Zealand and Australia opened their doors and invited people to come in. And so many people took up the offer. It was the sharing and the learning from each other, putting aside myths and misinformation about each other that I think was so powerful. The lasting memory for me will be the vigil that was held in the Peace Park here in Canberra, where the peace bell was rung 50 times to represent the loss of 50 lives, sadly joined by one other death later on. The heartfelt stories that night were listened to by over 3,000 people gathered in that evening dusk, but that happened all around Australia. I went to Queensland, where I met the Governor of Queensland, and he held a special afternoon tea and invited 80 community leaders. And as he was talking about what happened in Christchurch, the tears were running down his face. Such was the feeling of what had happened to our Muslim community. So I believe perhaps this is a moment in history, well, I hope, that we will look back and say, what was sought to divide us brought us together, made us more compassionate, made us stronger, more determined to live together in greater understanding of each other in an open and free society. But it's going to take more than just words. It is going to take the efforts and actions of all of us, not just in New Zealand and Australia, but internationally. And I'm so pleased that our Prime Minister at this moment has gone to Paris to co-chair a meeting with President Macron on what we can do globally towards the internet, the internet that spreads hatred and spreads terrorism and radicalises people. It has no place in a decent society, but we can't tackle that on our own. It has to be done in a global sense. And we feel in New Zealand, because of this tragedy, we have to try and we need to do something. So from this tragedy comes what is called the Christchurch Response, and it was written by both the ACT government here in Canberra and our New Zealand High Commission. And you have copies of it on the table. And I'm going to read it, and I thought maybe you might like to read it with me. And I think the words are so powerful. It's called the Christchurch Response. Our values provide a guiding light in our darkest hours. We stand together in representing diversity and inclusion. They are us. We stand together in kindness and compassion. They are us. We stand with those who have been impacted by the attack in Christchurch. They are us. We offer our thoughts and prayers. Our values will not and cannot be shaken by the attack in Christchurch. The attack in Christchurch is not who we are. We reject and condemn the hatred and extremism behind the attack. It has no place in our communities. Our communities will always welcome people who value peace and tolerance. Our commitment to these values will always hold true. They are us. Thank you very much for the invitation to be here tonight. Kia ora, nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.
Thank you so much,